Shocking rift. Ontario and Quebec order Alberta to quit Canada. Nation on the brink. Tensions in Canada are hitting a boiling point, and at the heart of it all is Alberta, a province tired of being treated like the nation's economic engine with no steering wheel. The resentment has been simmering for years, but it's now erupting into a political movement with real consequences. Across Alberta, town halls are packed, petitions are circulating, and conversations that were once relegated to the political fringe have entered the mainstream. The push for a 2026 referendum on Alberta's future within Canada is no longer a fantasy, it's a looming reality, and it's sending shockwaves through the national political landscape. For many Albertans, the central government in Ottawa no longer represents them. Whether it's the constant flow of equalization payments, the lack of Senate representation, or environmental regulations that are seen as a direct assault on the province's energy sector, frustration has reached a tipping point. In interviews and online forums, citizens express a deep sense of betrayal. They feel like contributors, not beneficiaries, and the message from Eastern Canada, particularly Ontario and Quebec, has been patronizing at best and openly hostile at worst. The narrative of Alberta being a winner is gaining ground in central Canada, but that only strengthens the resolve of Albertans who feel dismissed and misunderstood. Political figures like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith have tapped into this discontent, promoting a vision of greater provincial autonomy and constitutional reform. While Smith insists the goal isn't outright separation, she hasn't ruled it out either. The Alberta Sovereignty Within United Canada Act, passed in 2022, laid the groundwork for the province to push back against federal laws deemed harmful. But now things are escalating. A growing grassroots movement, with support from groups like the Alberta Prosperity Project, is actively collecting signatures to trigger a provincial referendum. If they reach the 10% threshold within the allotted 120-day window, Alberta will be on course for a formal vote to determine whether it remains part of Canada. The emotional charge behind this movement is more than just politics, it's personal. A viral TikTok video from a Western independence advocate compared Alberta's relationship with Ottawa to an abusive partnership, where one side takes and belittles while the other sacrifices and suffers in silence. The video humorously personified provinces, showing Alberta tired of being told it wouldn't make it on its own. The metaphor struck a chord with many, sparking conversations not just in Alberta, but in Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. The sentiment is growing. If Alberta leaves, who might follow? Saskatchewan has expressed similar frustrations, and with growing momentum, the possibility of a multi-province Western separation is no longer unthinkable. This isn't just emotional venting, it's tied to hard numbers. Alberta contributes a disproportionately large share to the national economy, especially through energy production, yet its political representation does not reflect that weight. In the Senate, it has far fewer seats than Atlantic provinces, with significantly smaller populations. Meanwhile, billions leave Alberta annually in the form of federal transfers, only to see that money redistributed to provinces like Quebec. And when Alberta pushes back, it's branded selfish or dramatic. It's a narrative that angers many, who believe their legitimate grievances are being dismissed with arrogance. One of the movement's leading voices, lawyer Jeffrey Rath, highlights the growing support among First Nations communities, challenging the assumption that Indigenous leadership is uniformly opposed to independence. According to Rath, many Indigenous voters are eager to cast ballots in the referendum, believing they have more to gain from local governance than from continued federal oversight. The idea that First Nations opposition could block independence is misleading, he argues, as each vote carries equal weight under the law. It's another reminder that this isn't a movement confined to a narrow political base. It's reaching across demographics and ideologies. Meanwhile, the response from Ottawa has been cautious, even nervous. Political leaders like Mark Carney, seen by many as a potential successor to Justin Trudeau, have downplayed the risks of national disunity, framing the movement as a manageable wave of discontent. But critics warn that Ottawa's approach is dangerously out of touch. By failing to acknowledge the scope and seriousness of Western frustration, federal leaders risk pushing moderate voices toward more radical solutions. Some warn that if Carney continues down the path of centralization and high-tax policies, he could go down in history as the last Prime Minister of a united Canada. National polling further exposes the divide. While most Albertans believe they are underrepresented and mistreated by the federal government, a majority of respondents in Ontario and Quebec think the system is fair as it is. There's little appetite in the East for reforming the Senate or adjusting transfer payments. In fact, many see the current structure as beneficial to their provinces. The result is a political deadlock. Alberta wants change. The East doesn't see a problem. And when that kind of stalemate hardens, only dramatic moves like referenda can break it. Media coverage hasn't helped. Articles in major Eastern outlets often portray Albertan separatists as extremists or sore losers, completely ignoring the decades of policy neglect and economic exploitation that underpin their anger. The tone from editorial boards in Toronto and Montreal is frequently dismissive, reinforcing the very sense of alienation that fuels the movement. For Albertans who already feel unheard, this only deepens the wound. The fact that Quebec, a province that has flirted with separation multiple times and receives over $15 billion in equalization annually, now mocks Alberta for its grievances, is especially galling to Westerners. And it's not just public perception at stake, it's infrastructure, pensions, and public services. The Alberta Prosperity Project is already working on a comprehensive plan that would outline how an independent Alberta would manage its own affairs. This includes creating a new pension system, restructuring healthcare funding, and building trade relationships independently of Ottawa. The goal is to prove that Alberta isn't just angry, it's capable. Once the numbers are laid out and voters see a viable future outside of Confederation, the emotional argument becomes a practical one. That's when a symbolic protest becomes a real political threat.